Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. We are going to start today with a box opening. I was sent this box full of books from Susan in the United States. She was cutting down on her tree collection and her book collection and thought she'd give them a good home. Susan had some health issues and it made her think, and she decided to cut down both her tree collection and her book collection to a more manageable size. And that's just something that'll happen to all of us someday in the future. I really want to thank you, Susan, for thinking of me, and I'll treasure these books until I pass them on to someone else. All right, the moment I've been waiting for since yesterday when I picked the box up from the post office. Let's open it up. This is very exciting. When I first got into bonsai, books were the only resource available. There was no online internet stuff. There was a few magazines in our club library, but it was mainly books is where you learn from. And it seems like, you know, there's not too many new bonsai books coming out these days. Everything's online. And these books are real treasures. They're something that's maybe an age that's gone by, and they're fantastic. There's such good information in them, and the pictures and everything. It's just fantastic. So let's get them open and see what we have. I'll stack all the books up and then we'll have a look through them and see what ones are here. I can tell right away they're awesome. Oh, look at all the magazines. Oh, this is fantastic. There's a letter here. Magazines. Oh, this is fantastic. And I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, that's it. You may have guessed from my videos that I like things that have a history, like my old truck and, you know, my old bicycles and my trees. So I asked Susan to put a sticker on it with her name on it, so it'll be part of the history of this magazine. So she's got Susan Wildwood to Nigel Saunders, June 2020. So that's just fantastic to have that history on a magazine. And when I pass it on to someone else, I'll do the same thing. I read Susan's letter, and it was really enjoyable as I read through the letter. It brought a smile to my face. I separated the magazines from the books, and I found a book in here by Wu Yi-sun, who inspired me to start Clip and Grow Bonsai. I was inspired by his trees that he donated to the Montreal Botanical Gardens, and so this book is just phenomenal. Pictures, fantastic pictures of his trees. So I'm so lucky to have this book. I'll show you the books that I got. Living Landscapes in Miniature, Bonsai Indoors and Out, Master's Book of Bonsai, Bonsai Basics. Another awesome book is Bonsai from the Wild by Nick Lentz. Mike from the RGB Club studied under Nick, and he has a lot of his trees and a lot of his pots. So he's a bit of a Nick Lentz collector. We've got What I've Learned from Bonsai by George Bingham. The Bonsai Handbook by David Prescott. Consulting editor Colin Lewis. Dwarf Potted Trees from the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. Creating Bonsai Landscapes, 18 Miniature Garden Projects. Penjing, The Chinese Art of Miniature Gardens. I'm going to like that one too. Bonsai from the Wild by Nick Lentz again. And I don't know if this is the same book. It doesn't look the same, but awesome. I like Nick Lentz's stuff. It's very artistic and very different. And then we have Bonsai Today. There's a nice wisteria. Bonsai Today with a quince. Zelkova. Tea tree. Magnolia. a quince, a black pine, a hornbeam, Bonsai Magazine, Bonsai Today, Japanese Winterberry, Bonsai, Journal of the American Bonsai Society. Oh, this is good stuff. Bonsai Today again. These are awesome. I am going to spend hours and hours looking through all these, learning, looking. These go back to 95, which is, you know, quite a few years ago. Bonsai Focus. And another Bonsai Focus. And one last book. We've got a hardcover book. It is, where is the opening here? Right here. The Art of Indoor Bonsai by John Ainsworth. Oh, this looks awesome. Oh, yeah, nice stuff. I think anyone who grows bonsai, you've got to be in that mindset where you're always learning, and these books are certainly going to help me out. So thanks very much, Susan. This is going to be awesome reading. I'll load the best birthday present a guy could ever get back in the box and put them inside the house. And we'll get started today's work in the Bonsai Zone. We've had no rain for 3 weeks now, and it's been above 30 degrees in the daytime highs, so it's been really hot and humid for 3 weeks. And finally, we're getting our first rain just as they start to repair the roof on the plant room. You can see the scaffolding up there. They just started today, so hopefully it won't leak too bad. They do have some tarps up there. It's the next day now, and I have Connor coming down from Toronto for a visit. Not only did we get our first rain in 3 weeks last night, but we've also got our first cloudy day in 3 weeks. We've just been having full sunshine for 3 weeks in a row. And it's been a little stressful on the plants. I've had to keep watering them like crazy. So I think they'll enjoy today. Kind of a cloudy day, lots of humidity in the air, and cooler temperatures. So while I'm waiting for Connor to show up, I'm going to start work on the elephant diorama. These are Thuja occidentalis trees. They're native to Canada. And they're styled to look like the African acacia trees, the flat top African acacia trees. And I've got my elephants down here. So I just want to prune up all this new spring growth. I've got a lot of crisscrossing branches up here. So just kind of sorting out the basic structure, pruning back all the long shoots, like here where they've grown out, pinching the tips, just kind of doing a general maintenance type prune to it. I noticed way back here, you can see there's a little pine seedling coming up. There's the seed on top, and the needles will open up and that'll fall off eventually. I have no idea where that seed came from and why it's in there. It's possible that it's one of the seeds that was sent to me, either a jack pine seed or a sugar pine, and the birds flicked it over into here and it germinated. So I'm not sure where it came from, but we'll grow it and see what it develops into. I've styled these cedars to look like African acacia trees. And if I do separate the elephants from the trees and put these trees in more of a Canadian diorama or a Northern Canada type penjing, the shape of the trees will be really good because you see a lot of cedars in this type of a shape on the shores of like Lake Superior and that, windblown, and you know, they don't grow into tall trees because they're near the edge of the lake and they're always being damaged by the winter winds. I'll sort out the structure one branch at a time, just eliminating, you know, branches that are growing in towards the interior, branches that are crossing each other, just cleaning up the structure. So this branch is growing in towards the center of the tree, so I'm going to remove it, keeping my better branches out here. You can see on this tree how fine the foliage is on it, and that's because it's been pot grown for many, many years. So, you know, compared to one you would see in nature, this is really fine, delicate foliage, which is really nice to have. I better eat these and try them out too. Not too bad. There is some kind of neurotoxin in these leaves. If you eat too much of it, I don't think it's good for you, but I think in small quantities it's okay. So I've read anyway. So shoot going towards the center here. Prune these long tips off here. Keeping my branches fanning outwards. There's a good shoot to eat. Not bad, not bad. Some rocket branches developing here. I'll prune back like that. Because you're always keeping your better branches and removing the ones that aren't so good, slowly over years this branch structure becomes really nice. It just takes time. It takes time for the new shoots to develop, so you can choose the best ones. And I'm going to take this one off in the inside here. It's just overlapping with another branch, and I'll take this one off too. And this one. I'm wondering, I think I'll take this vertical part off here. Trim this back. So this branch is pretty well there. It's a little pinching at the tips, and I think it'll be fine. So I'll just pinch it to a rounded shape. And that's got that branch sorted out. You know, the best I can do for today. I'll move on to the next branch here now. So I'm just looking at the basic structure of the branch. It's looking good. I'm going to remove this vertical section here. Like that. If you let some of these branches grow too, they start getting coarse. They start gaining strength. So it's kind of best to keep them pruned and pinched, you know, every 3 to 4 weeks, and that keeps the branches in check and keeps them growing a little more slowly with less vigor, so they keep their delicate branching and foliage. They don't start getting too coarse. So this one's going a strange direction. It's crossing all the other branches, so I'm going to remove that. And it's kind of nice when a new branch does develop in the direction you want, and you can finally get rid of some of the ones that you don't want. It kind of transforms the tree into something really nice. So I'm starting to see the structure from above of this branch now more clearly. Getting rid of some of the growth that's going in towards the center of the tree. Pruning back some of these really vigorous branches. And as I said, you know, a combination of scissor pruning and pinching does a really good job on these Thujas. I'm going to take this whole tip off here. Like that. Bit of pinching here. And it's a little scary, you know, pinching these back. You always wonder, how far back can I go before the branch gets too weak and dies off? So you got to kind of find that balance point of pruning it back enough to keep it under control versus pruning it too much and making the branch weak, and then it can go brown and die. So, you know, it's just like trimming your hedge. You can't hack it away to nothing. You've got to keep some good growth on it. You can only do so much at a time. So consistent, regular maintenance, pruning is best, rather than going at it once or twice a year and just hacking it back. I think I'm going to remove this whole rocket branch here though. It's just too coarse. So I think that part of the branch is pruned up nicely now, if I can isolate it, except I missed one long tip here. Take that off to there. There, that's got that branch pruned up. So now I'll move on to the one beside it. This whole forest is growing in just a regular seed tray, not a bonsai pot. So, you know, you can create some pretty nice stuff without spending a lot of money on pots. You can just grow them in training trays or whatever you can find. And when your tree gets to a certain point in life, you'll want to get a fancy pot for it and show it off. And it's like a reward. You develop the trees and then they get to a certain point in their life where they deserve a pot. And that's kind of a nice point to get them to. Taking off some of these rocket branches. Pruning the structure of your trees like this, it just builds over time. I remember I was at a bonsai show the one time, and Usher, who was a member of the Guelph Bonsai Society, he's passed away now, but he had this little cedar tree there, and I said, "Oh, that little cedar looks really good, Usher." And he says, "Well, thank you." He said, "I've been working on that for 12 years, and it's, you know, it was finally to the point where it was show ready." And so yeah, it takes time. It takes time to build that branch structure, and every year it builds upon itself and just slowly gets better and better. So you can't do everything at once, is what I'm trying to say. Just take your time and your trees will develop. This branch is coming along nicely. I'm just pinching the tips, getting that rounded profile to them. This just avoids having a whole bunch of little pieces sticking out. It makes a kind of a rounded profile, and it, you know, makes the tree look more mature and more miniature. If you have like a profile that has all these points jutting out, it doesn't look very miniature at all. I've got this branch in good shape. It all comes off of one branch here, divides into two, so this part and then this part here. So I've got one of the major branches pruned up on the tree. So let's rotate the tree around and we'll do one of the branches around here. So this branch here is the main kind of trunk line, the continuing trunk line of the tree. So the apex of the tree will be coming off of that branch. So I've got to keep that in mind as I'm pruning, that, you know, this will become sort of a flat apex here. So I want to get the height of the other branches in the area reduced. Oh, I hear Connor coming. Come on back, I'll clear you off a spot here.
Oh, awesome.
How was the drive down?
It was nice. I stopped by Guelph, that's why I was a little late.
Oh, that's okay.
Hey, I have one more thing actually. Hi everyone, Connor here in the Bonsai Zone, enjoying a pleasant afternoon. We had some light rain in the morning, but it's nice and sunny out. I just brought over some of the little larch plugs that we got from the KW order in the spring. So they're the same ones that Nigel put in his root maker pots, and I thought I'd bring them over to show the little experiment that I did. So we have 5 little large plugs. So they come in 1-inch plugs that are about 4 inches deep. They're about 1 or 2 years old, I believe. So when I got them, I did 3 treatments. So in this first one, I removed all of the plug soil, combed out the roots, and replaced it with bonsai soil. The second one, I did nothing to the roots, but I applied some thick gauge wire and bent it pretty severely. And then the last one, on the side, I did both operations too. So I removed all the plug soil, combed out the roots, and put it back in bonsai soil. And then I also applied heavy gauge wire and did a thorough bend. And then over here we have Nigel's 2 treatments. So we have one in his soil, the 50-50 perlite turfus mix, and the one in Chris Hendry's soil, which is a variety of things, but I think the main thing is that it's a larger particle size. So it's very interesting because we see different characteristics between the treatments that were conducted. The one that I did only root work too, and did no trimming, looks very similar to Nigel's too. We're kind of just comparing the size of the atypical shoot And we'll get a close-up soon, and you can see there's small branches coming out the side of them. The one in Nigel's soil looks a little bit stronger than the one in Chris's soil, and we think that's because Nigel's soil is holds a little bit more water, and these native larches really love their water. This could have also just been a slightly larger plug as well. It's not just a backyard experiment. But the biggest difference, I think, which was I think the biggest takeaway from the experiment, is the difference between the one that had two operations done on it compared to the other two that only had one operation done on it. So these ones, if I bring the apex up to the same height, they're a little bit comparable. This one still looks stronger, but the one that had both operations from it, its apex, we just broke it, but it was probably about this big, so probably about half. So it just reinforces the idea of doing one operation per year on your bonsai. So here we have a little thyme bonsai, just picked up from a nursery stock, and just in a little half pint or a pint growing container. It was much larger, well, out of the frame, but probably double the height, and put it in this nice duck egg green pot. I'm not sure, it's got some sort of stamp on it. I'm not sure where it's from, but it matches the variegated leaves quite nicely.
Yeah.
And I'm just growing it as a wide broom or a large field tree style.
Yeah, it looks like an old apple tree.
Yeah.
Or something, or...
Yeah,
nice.
I don't think, like, if it has many trunks, you use all of them. You don't need to cut them down to one just to fit a certain style. So here I have a little Chinese elm that I've been working on for a couple years. It's planted on a dragon stone. It's a type of an aquarium stone. I believe it's petrified wood. And right now I have just a little bit of saran wrap and some sphagnum moss over the whole stone, just to try to encourage some more roots growing over the rock. This was actually a side part of a much larger Penjing rock planting, but the other trees in the forest kept dying, and this one was just getting more and more mature, and I thought I had to remove it and start fresh on the other planting, so I salvaged it and put it all in its own spot. It's in quite this large square, simple container, and eventually when this gets removed and the roots are exposed, we'll set a nice beach or seaside landscape to it. So this is my Barbados cherry. I've had it for 2 years in training now. So a couple years ago when I was in Taiwan, Nigel generously offered to babysit my trees, and we were just discussing how it was then. So basically I got this tree from Chris Henry. It was in a shallow small Chinese bonsai pot, probably only about this deep. So I pulled it out of that pot and I put it in an extra large container early in spring, and I let it grow all summer while Nigel graciously babysat it. It grew vigorously, uncontrolled, and then when I got it back late summer, I removed all of the soil from the large container, and I slipped probably 2 or 3 inch air hose up along the roots, and then I hooked the roots in the air hose tube to an L bracket, and the progression since then in the roots has just been lowering and lowering the container. So I noticed with the air tube, it was a consistent diameter all the way down, And I didn't want that. I wanted something that flared out at the base. So I just kind of made this hodgepodge of, I think it's part pot, and then I think this is drywall tape. It just makes a nice mesh that you can form on things, so I find that handy. And so the process on the roots is just lowering and exposing them more to air. You want to leave them in the soil as long as possible because they thicken up faster in the soil. I'm not really too much concerned about that aspect because the thickness of my trunk is the illusion of a lot of the roots. So I don't really care about the individual root getting thick very quickly. I more care about filling out the more quantity of roots. So I'll be removing sections of this, exposing more roots like on a monthly basis or whenever I get around to it. And yeah, so we can do that now. It's a pretty simple process. So I'm just gonna have a little hook here. I'm just gonna remove this first layer of tape. And then we're just getting the tweezers and start poking and getting all the soil out. Oh yes, the famous root rake. Yeah, so I found a little root growing here at the surface. So this is a good example of trying to balance hardening off the surface roots and maintaining these little shoots, because I don't want these here. I want these to be growing down near eventually where the base of the tree is.
So you want more roots as you get down, right?
Yeah.
Simple, and then it gets more and more complicated.
Exactly. It's the same principle as a branch. It starts thick and then divides down into the soil. Just looking back here, and we have the first cherry. So it flowers quite a bit, but I haven't seen cherry yet. So I'm gonna let that one develop. It's only one, so that's all we'll be doing to this tree. I'm gonna leave all of the foliage on it to let it continue to grow for the rest of the summer. And I'll probably do a trim late summer before it goes back inside for the winter. So that's all the work we'll be doing on this today. So this is the last one I brought. I kept everything. I tried to keep a theme of growing things in weird containers. So this was a similar practice. I put it in this time was a larger black pipe, just a storm drain or something like that. So originally there was no rocks. So the first step in this is from a cutting from another Natal Ficus. So the first step was to take it out of its existing container. It was in some sort of plastic container. I got rid of all the soil, bunched the roots up, and these things are corrugated so they come up and down. So I squeezed it all together, fit the roots up in it, and then expanded the whole pipe. Then I poked the soil down, filled up all the spaces, and let it grow for 2 months or so. And then I'll send you a photo of that, Nigel, so we can show everyone.
Okay.
So I let it grow in that pipe, in the tube, until I saw roots coming out of the bottom of the tube. So at the time, the tube was probably a meter or so in length. So it grew a meter or so roots in a couple months. So this has just been super vigorous. So the next step was getting some cool rocks from the aquarium. So this is red lava stone. So the first one is at the apex, and you can see the trunk is already fusing into the first cavern. So today what we're going to do is remove the remaining Frankenstein wrap, and we're going to wrap the entire thing in sphagnum moss. So I want to focus the root areas around the red rocks. So I'm going to put more sphagnum moss in that section. Basically I'm going to control where I want roots to grow with the moss. And then the moss will keep that area nice and moist. And basically I just want to thicken up everything on the upward part and allow all the roots to grow into the pot at the bottom. Okay, so the first step we're going to do is just cut off all of this string and expose some of the soil. one last one here. Wow.
Emerald green.
Liked the humidity, and look at this root.
Oh, wow. Look at them, that's something, eh?
So we'll just keep cutting off my contraption that I made here to keep the roots in.
Okay.
And see what we're left with. So this is just the same mesh that we use at the bottom of the bonsai pots.
Where do you get that from, Connor?
Hardware stores.
Hardware stores? Okay. This is like steampunk bonsai.
So we have some of our valuable roots growing through the mesh, and I don't want to cut out them, so I'm going to cut out the mesh around it.
Okay. Life's too short for ordinary bonsai, eh?
Well, I got to keep them interesting.
I know.
My other project that I wanted to bring over, and we'll have to keep it for another time, I think is even more interesting.
Okay.
And it's the Indian root bridge.
Oh yeah.
And I'm doing it with the same species.
Cool. David Johnson has a lot of interesting projects on the go too.
Yeah. So this one looks like it grew right over it.
Wow.
This one's completely embedded. I think I'm just going to leave it and let it grow over.
Grow over, yeah.
So you can see there's other rocks as well.
Oh yeah.
And I'm trying to do the Avatar floating island
Floating
theme.
rocks. So that eventually the trees will support the rocks, right?
Yeah, that's the goal. So right now, you can see it's being supported by this frame.
Yeah.
And it's going to take several years of full root growth in the bottom pot.
Yeah.
I may even get a bigger pot for the bottom.
Yeah.
And this main zip tie, every time I do this, I'm going to move this main zip tie a little bit lower. So this trunk right here is sufficiently thick. It's about 1 inch or so. So I'm going to try to see if this will support just this one rock. But that'll be the last step of today's work. So next we're just going to cut off this tube section and expose the rest of the rocks. These are great for this kind of work because you have the dull end going into the roots, so you know you're not going to cut any roots.
When did you put all this on, Connor? How long ago?
Probably early spring when it was still inside.
Okay.
So this was one of my last trees to transition outside. So it's probably been in this long training form for 6 months, about half a year.
Okay.
First couple months were with no rocks. Then as we break it off, you can see I wrapped the rocks either tightly against into a groove similar like this. Sometimes there's holes in them, so when we get down we can see that. And then just with some saran wrap. And now we're gonna check how well it's swollen up into the rock compared to this first one, which has already been exposed for several months.
Yeah.
So you can see this large root around here broke off into 2 smaller roots. So just remembering now, I buttressed this rock up in between that, so that's what's supporting this rock.
Okay.
And then there's a larger one here.
Wow. You have to have that vision of many years in the future, don't you?
Yes.
What you want and how to achieve it.
You're looking at an ugly pipe for many months.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll get a reposition and get these last 2 cylinders off. I'm just keeping the roots we've already exposed nice and misty because they're in the direct sun. So we have all the tubing off, and this can now, I can see all the roots except for where they are over the rocks. So I'm just going to lightly remove some of the soil so I can remember where I put the roots. I believe one of the thicker roots, there's a hole in this rock. And you can see it comes in and it's gonna spiral around and come out here. And then the other two, because they break from 1 to 2 here. And then the other one is over here in the back. So it looks like this rock is almost sitting on this. So maybe, oh, here it is. So this is the one in the hole. And then they go around and they split on this.
Okay.
So I'm going to look at each rock, determine if I want to take off the saran wrap or not. My idea here was to replace all of the tubing and the saran wrap with this sphagnum moss.
Yeah.
And then I was going to keep little amounts of sphagnum moss in between where there's no rocks, because I don't really want these bushy roots growing there. I may want a third one of a different size to compare to these two. But I want most of the rocks, most of the roots forming in the pot.
You can see Connor's vision here. It looks like the Hallelujah Mountains in the movie Avatar, with the floating rocks and the vines going down. So I think, you know, many years from now, it's going to be really something. It's going to be very unique.
Just looking at this bottom rock here, and there's a nice division of the roots with this extra one coming here, but there's not a lot of root on this side. So I'd like to move this root that goes on the back, replace it with this root, and move this one to the front. So to do that, I'm going to unwrap this root from the saran wrap and jostle those roots into place. Wow, that fits nicely there a little bit.
Yeah, that looks really good.
Put this one back over that.
The Navi would be proud.
And then this kind of fits nicely.
Yeah, I like that.
Here.
Oh, that looks good. You just need a third hand to tie it in place.
Yeah.
This is where you cut and then you come back 10 hours later and say, done. See how easy it was?
So the wrap is back on the lower rock. We repositioned these two roots. It gave them a little more movement. So now this root's coming from the back and sweeping around up front. And this one is zigzagging, taking up some space. We have this root coming back with some aerial root growth. So you can tell that these are aerial roots because they have the red tip. Whereas some of these are the roots that are growing in a high moisture soil content. So this was an in-soil root, and this was an aerial root.
Right.
So you can see
versus the white tip, eh?
They're different.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave this one hanging around the back, and we'll see what happens to it. So the next step is we're going to take some of this wet sphagnum moss, and I'm going to surround the points where I would like some more roots to grow. So I'm going to probably make a similar to the Barbados cherry. I'm going to try to make a flaring base.
Looks good, doesn't it? Look at that.
Yeah, so this one's...
Yeah, they really
I would say
grip
both of
the
these
rock.
are in place.
Yeah, they really grip the rock really well there. That's amazing.
This species just grows so fast.
Yeah.
There's, like I said, this has only been on this rock for 3 or 4 months.
Amazing, eh?
We're going to replace the areas of the tubing with this grated sphagnum moss. It was pre-soaked, mainly because it was outside in the rain we got yesterday. But if it's not wet, you're going to want to soak it for several hours, because once it's on where you want to put it, it's much harder to get wet, and it doesn't form as well when it's dry. And bring it over the moss, and then we're going to use a wax covered hemp string to tie the moss onto the areas. And like I said, I'm just going to fill in some of the areas that I want roots to grow. So I'm going to keep a lot of moss here and some more up here, but we'll just be putting that around the whole tree, making sure we keep these roots from drying out, which is not the biggest deal. with the Natal ficus, they go through dry spells
Yeah.
quite regularly, so they're accustomed to it.
I've had aerial roots drop down and then the tip dries out, and then the next time it rains or they get wet again, then more sub roots come off of the same one.
Oh, maybe that will happen to this one. It looks like
Yeah, probably.
it dried, and there's lots of, you can see some aerial roots growing up here. This used to be bagged. This was the first one to go.
Yeah. Yeah, just because the aerial root, the tip has died, doesn't mean the whole root's dead, does it?
Yeah.
It can always grow back again.
So we'll start from the bottom, packing some moss. We'll leave this light.
So you were saying that wax-covered twine doesn't decompose, so that's good.
Yeah, it's
to use,
if it stays next to this moisture, heavily moisture in the sphagnum moss, regular twine will start degrading and breaking.
Yeah.
So I just squeeze it down in between my hands to make a coating, and then I can put that onto the rock and we'll wrap lightly some string around it. Wrap it several times.
Again, you need 3 hands, don't you? So look at this now, eh?
Yeah, so we're just building the moss tower higher and higher.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's getting a little difficult to stack up the moss because the tower was getting tighter. We're going to repurpose the plastic screen and build it up to the top here. So I'm just retying it down, and then we're going to pack that full of
So you can
sphagnum.
still water and mist through the plastic screen.
Yeah.
Eh? So it's better than using plastic, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, you'll get a more even water through it, whereas if this was all plastic, I would be having to drip it through the top.
Yeah, which is why maybe you had that dry spot down at the bottom, eh?
Mm-hmm.
So this will be way better.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the last step is we're going to give it a nice thorough watering. You guys like the Haas cans, eh?
Yeah.
They're the best.
They're good.
Okay, here we go.
That's the catchphrase. Here we go.
Yeah, I'm in the Bonsai Zone.
Oh, that's watering really well, isn't it?
I think this is going to be much better than those tubes.
How fast do you think this will dry out? Like,
So this is, it's on the same schedule as all my other pots, or my other trees. It's just twice a day.
yeah. Depending on the weather, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'll come home midday and up here is dry
Okay.
in soil, but I'm trying to promote the root growth in here, so I don't mind if the top dries up.
Now, do you find, because you can come home midday, do you find your trees are healthier now that you have more time at home?
For sure, my trees are definitely the major benefactor of the stay-at-home order.
That's the first thing I noticed when I stopped my full-time work and worked at home,
Yeah.
was that my trees suddenly got better. Health-wise and shape-wise, and
Yeah, just more time in the morning, more time in the evening.
yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, there we go.
The work is all done on Connor's tree, looking really good. And that is going to be it for today. But it's time now for today's updates. The first update for today is my Princess Earrings bonsai. And it is in flower. And they're beautiful. And look at the size of them compared to my hand. These giant flowers that came from these little pods. So they come out a kind of a purple color with the yellow on the bottom. And as they get older, the purple turns to white. And yeah, really spectacular flowers for a little bonsai. Okay, today might be the day we get the baobab seeds. Let's try again. There's one letter at the back. It's just junk mail. All right, nothing today. The second update for today is the seeds that are in the screenhouse. And here's a look at the pines. And We think these are the sugar pines. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them growing now. And they're looking good. They're kind of opening up and looking like spiders. That's what my wife calls them. She says they look kind of creepy. And in the seed tray over here, this is the seed tray with the tamarins. And then I put the, whatever those seeds were, maybe baobab seeds, but it's unlikely. And I've got a little sprout there, and there's one over here. So I don't know if those are tamarins or what they are, but they do look like a tree seedling. So we'll stay tuned with these and find out what they are on the next update. My last update for today is my Sarissa fotida. That's styled in that kind of flat top acacia style, which I may change more to a tropical style, like the tropical trees that get the big dome canopy. So since the last time I did some fairly heavy pruning on it, it's regrown all its new branches in, and it's looking quite good. I still have, the odd dead branch at the edge of the canopy here, but the main part of the branch is alive. So I may have to trim off some of the dead branches there. But basically, it's filled in quite nicely, as you can see by this top view. It's getting a good shape to it. So it's on the road to recovering again and becoming quite a nice little tree. I've got lots of interesting books to read at nighttime now, and it was great having Connor down for the day. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone. I should see a red light there. Yep. So you can see Connor's vision. It looks like the Hallelujah Mountain. The second update for today is the little seedlings that are in the greenhouse.
And put it in this nice little turquoisey, that's probably not turquoise. What color is this, Nigel? We'll edit all this out.
Apple green? No.
Yeah.
Olive green? I don't know. What color is it? Duck egg green. Duck egg green.
Yeah. This nice duck egg green pot. I'm not sure.